This is the only recap of you that you're going to need before season 5 kicks off here in a few days. So let's jump right in, and we're going to go season by season, all following Mr. Joe Goldberg, the one and only. So kicking it off in season 1, we get to meet Joe Goldberg, and he works at a bookstore. And who comes into this bookstore but a nice lady by the name of Beck. And he finds some things intriguing about her, and she does talk to him. And that opens up a little bit of a door for him, because once he sets his eyes on her, he then becomes infatuated with her. And that's kind of the exciting part about this, is following Joe along in his journey throughout all of the seasons, but in this one particularly, he is kind of wooing over this girl, and he starts stalking her on social media. He runs into her, ends up taking her phone, gets her a new phone, and he uses that old phone to be able to continually follow what's going on with her. How can I know what she's up to? Who's she talking to? What's she sending? Where's she going to be? And he ends up being in all these locations and doing all this stuff because, well, let's face it, he's one hell of a stalker, and he knows what he's doing. And in the process, he finds out that she has a boyfriend, goes by the name of Benji, and Benji's kind of a douchebag, and he wants to protect her because that's Joe's whole motivation in this whole entire season. Is he really, for some reason, feels like he has to protect Beck. He's infatuated with her. He loves her. He needs them all to himself. And anybody that's bad for her, they can go. So he ends up grabbing Benji, and he ends up locking Benji in the infamous cage in this series. It's a big glass box. There's a door on the front. You can't get out. There's a door, like a little window on the side, where you can put something in to the person inside there, and they can then take it from you, but only one side opens at a time for safety. And as we find out later on, that was something that he got locked into by the guy who owns the bookstore, Mr. Mooney, and it was because of his unappreciation, I guess, of books, but it was more kind of like a power trip that Mr. Mooney wanted to have over top of Joe, and Joe learned very well from how great it can do for you. So Benji's in there, and Benji eventually dies, but he does this because he wants Beck to know that Benji's not there, and she can move on from Benji because Benji was no good for her. Hence, then we meet the group of friends. She's got 3 main friends, and boy, is one of them not up to the liking of Joe, and that is Peach. Peach is the friend who is infatuated with Beck just as much as Joe is. She likes to have Beck kind of under her control, under her thumb. She got all these weird pictures on her phone. It's like a very, I'm into you, I like you, but I'm afraid to admit it type of thing. So she does all she can to kind of keep Beck down below her level so she can keep that control over Beck. Joe sees this, and he's not a fan, and he isn't going to do much about it in the beginning until then Peach decides she needs to get Beck away from Joe because Joe's no good. So Joe ends up running up behind her and smashing her in the back of the head with a rock. Doesn't kill her though. And actually, Peach is really smart with this and does a few different things to get Beck to go with her to an house just outside the city. They can go and relax. Nobody else, just the 2 of them, as Beck thought. But Joe followed along, so he knows what's really going on, and they had a man come over because she needs Beck to give up on Joe. But she also wants to use this as an opportunity to have a little fun with Beck herself, and she starts kissing on Beck, and Beck kind of gets like a no, this is not for me type of situation, and she wants to leave. But Peach decides, hey, might as well screw this new guy while he's here. The next day, Joe ends up running into Peach inside the house by accident, and he tries to come up with a great lie as to why he's there after Beck had already left. But Peach isn't falling for this, and they end up into a nice little struggle. She ends up shooting him in the leg, and then he ends up getting the gun and blasting her right in the head. Point blank, dead. Dead. And as you would understand in this situation, Beck is a little bit distraught. Her best friend, who she was literally just with, died. And don't know why. There's a nice suicide note there, but really? Is that why? She has a hard time dealing with this, so she and Joe do seem to get closer in the very beginning of this, but then Joe kind of gets pushed to the side and away. And that's while Beck's seeing her new therapist, Dr. Nikki. And Joe then suspects that Dr. Nikki and Beck have something going on. So he decides to start seeing Dr. Nikki as well, and he changes his name, and he changes the name of Beck into his boyfriend's name, and kind of working through this, and he thinks, you know what, maybe Dr. Nikki's not a bad guy, maybe I was looking at this all wrong, and him and Beck kind of get into a little bit of a scuffle, and, well, he accuses her, she breaks up with him, so then he decides he has to attack Dr. Nikki because he needs to know for himself for sure, and he does this so, not to kill him, but just to get his phone, and uses that to look through the messages to find out that, yes, Beck has been having an affair with her therapist this entire time. So during this breakup, Joe ends up starting to see somebody else, and that's all going fine and dandy, but it's kind of making Beck a little jealous, and Beck decides that she needs Joe. So while Joe and Beck are off having their own little fun on the side, they end up getting back together. In this whole process, Beck happens to be in his apartment and finds this box full of goodies, which is what he always has. He likes to have a box of souvenirs of what he's done. And in this box of souvenirs, she finds Peach's phone, she finds her old phone, and she finds some teeth in there. She ends up getting locked in a cage. And she finds out that those are Benji's teeth. So yes, Joe's a killer. So now she kind of fears for her life, and he puts her in her room, and she decides she's going to start writing a book. And she writes a whole book about how all this stuff that had happened, but doesn't blame it on Joe. She blames it on the therapist. Brings Joe in so that he can read some of this stuff, and he thinks that she's learned her ways being locked in this box and that she's going to do better, and he goes in, she stabs him with a typewriter key, and she makes her way out and locks him in. She thinks she's going to escape. She's all the way up to the top of the stairs, and it has a lock there as well, and then she sees Paco, this little boy that Joe's been taking care of, and Joe actually protected him from his evil stepdad, and ended up killing the evil stepdad, getting Paco to not admit to anything so they could get away with it. And Paco just turns her back on her and shuts the door. She ends up heading back downstairs to she gets murdered. Joe kills the love of his life, and he uses that lovely book 4 months later. He ends up finishing it off, I guess, getting it published, and Beck dies a hero, and Dr. Nikki was clearly the bad guy all along. You can read it in the book. He ends up getting arrested and going to prison. Boom, season 1 comes to an end, except for there's this one caveat where he's in the bookstore, and he runs into Candace. And Candace was this storyline all along about how he used to have a girlfriend, and she dumped him out of nowheres, and then she flew off to Europe, and she went to be with a man because she was cheating, and she doesn't talk to any family, any friends, or anything. So the whole storyline, they're making you kind of believe that Joe did the killing, but we didn't know for sure until Candace showed up. Hence, poof, we go to season 2. And in season 2, Joe has some flashbacks of a conversation he started to have with Candace, and he is not a big fan of this conversation, and he ends up saying, shit, I gotta get out of here. And he goes all the way from New York to LA. He moves into a new apartment, and his neighbor is a girl by the name of Delilah, who kind of runs the place, and her little sister, Ellie. And then he decides he needs to work, and he's going to go work at this grocery store called a Navrin. And at this grocery store called a Navrin, which also is a bookstore, when he's there, he does an interview, and he nails it because these people have no idea how to sell books, and obviously he knows everything about books. He's an avid reader, and that's what he was doing at the last place, was running a bookstore in New York. So while he's there, he runs into a girl, and boom, it starts all over again. He's infatuated, she talks to him for a little bit, and her name is Love Quinn. And he falls for this Love Quinn really, really hard. But he does also have a soft spot for this girl, Ellie, because she is a young girl, underage, who is getting herself in some unfathomable situations, we'll say. To the point where she ends up going over to a guy's house who is a very famous comedian, and he's gonna rape her because Joe sneaks in and sees him dropping some drops in the drink, and Joe puts some in his drink as well, and he accidentally kills this guy. First he was just going to kind of torture him a little bit, but then he ends up throwing him down the stairs. He smashes his head, boom, dead. And that kind of kicks off the series of events. In this season, his name is actually Will, and he got that name from another guy who does fake identities, and he locked that guy in the cage. But in trying to be a better person this time around, he actually let Will out of the cage, and Will obviously never told anybody because he does a bunch of skeevy, shady shit as well. So Love Quinn is the new interest in this one, and she has a twin brother, who also runs an Auburn, and come to find out Love Quinn works at an Auburn, and her brother's name is 40, and 40 is this kind of unhinged-ish a little character, like he likes to do drugs and party, and he's trying to be a better person, and he and Joe get along really, really well. So they're going to do this nice retreat to their parents' anniversary, and Love takes Joe with her because they're dating now, and then Amy shows up, which is 40's new girlfriend, and turns out Amy is actually Candace. So Candace then creates a whole lot of stirring of shit. Joe's nervous she's going to say something. She said that she's not there to get him. She is there to protect the Quinns, and that if anything happens to her, there is somebody who's expecting something from her every single hour, reporting back that she's okay. If that does not happen, that person's going to release all that information to the police that she has on Joe, so Joe can go to prison. But she gets a little overzealous, and she decides she's going to do some sneaking around, and she sneaks into Joe's apartment to find Love Quinn there. And Love wants to know what's going on in this sense, and Candace just breaks down to tell her everything that happened, how Joe was really controlling and Joe was obsessive, and one time she was running away from Joe in the woods and she tripped and fell, and he ended up smashing her head off of a tree. He thought he killed her, buried her alive, and she was able to get out. Now, she did go to the police about this, but because it's a he said, she said, they didn't do anything about it. They said there's no real hard evidence. This isn't going to go anywhere. You might as well just disappear. That is actually your safest bet in this situation, so he doesn't come back for you. If he thinks you're dead, be dead. So that's what had happened there. Love Quinn pays her a bunch of money to be on her way, because clearly she was here screwing over 40 for no apparent reason, just because of Joe. And then she breaks up with Joe. And of course, Joe's trying to be a better person, and he is feeling a little bit down, to where then she decides she's going to start dating a new guy in front of Joe to make him jealous. And 40 says this is what she's doing. Obviously, she still likes you. Don't worry about it. And in the end, she's doing all this stuff, and then he's fooling around with Delilah. And he and 40 are going to start working on a film, because 40 got the rights to this awesome book. And what film is that? That's the film of Guinevere Beck's life. So he's going to help write the movie script to the book that he finished, that he actually was the bad guy in. Toughy situation, but that's what he's going for. He eventually gets in a predicament where Delilah figures out who he is, in a sense, mainly that he had killed the famous guy, and she's going to go after him. So what does he do? He locks her in the infamous cage, and he says, I'm not going to hurt you, I'm not going to kill you. Like, he puts cuffs on her, like, these are going to break off at this time frame. I'm going to be long gone out of here by the time that happens, so I'm going to make sure you're set up with food, you have drink. I don't want to hurt you. Obviously, this is not my goal anymore. I'm trying to be better, but I can't have you telling on me, so I need to be able to hop, skip town, and get out of here. But he gets kidnapped, him and 40, and then they're thrown into a room where they think they have to stay, but 40 set it all up so they could work on this script. And ironically, Ellie's there as well, because she also helps work on movies, so she's there even though Joe has her sister locked away. Whole fun situation. He wakes up the next day, because they did a whole lot of drugs, and Joe didn't know that was going to happen, and he's trying to piece together what happened. He goes back to check on Delilah to make sure everything's good going on there, and finds her dead. So then it becomes a murder mystery, because he needs to figure out who did this. He could have done it. And he's piecing through the night trying to figure it all out, and then he ends up going back to Delilah, and on his way there, who does he run into? Candace. Because 40 called Candace. She recognized the building in the background and found her way there to be able to get Joe, and she locks him in the cage, and he has no way to get out. Then the doors start to open, and Candace gets a little worried, and it's Love Quinn, and she walks in on Candace locking him in a cage while he's there with dead Delilah. And she's explaining everything to her, like, see, I told you, I wanted to be able to have proof, this is what you got, this is going to be awesome, we can finally get this guy. And Quinn and Candace start to leave, and Candace is like, come on, like, what's going on? And Love kills Candace. Then she walks back to Joe and realizes that she's the one who also had been sneaking in there. She knew everything about Joe. She knew all about his past, everything that he was lying about Will. But she liked him. He's a man who's damaged, and she likes her men damaged because she wants to be able to play Mrs. Fix-It. She's the one who killed Delilah as well. She went in there, she saw Delilah, knew he was getting infatuated with somebody in her eyes. What did she do? Need to get rid of that person, so we off her. Joe's pissed because this is none of the stuff that he actually wanted. And when Love goes in to open the thing, he grabs her and he has something right up against her throat ready to kill her, and Love says she's pregnant. So he lets Love live in this situation, and now they're going to make the best of it because they have a baby to take care of in the future. But while this is all going on, 40 is starting to figure out who Joe is, figures everything out, and wants to help his sister Love because he doesn't want her to get hurt. Joe hurts all the women around him. So they end up going to a Navrin, and she's trying to plead with 40 as if she doesn't know what's going on. And 40 has nothing to do with it. He pulls out a gun. He puts it point blank up to Joe's head, where this is going to be the execution of Joe Goldberg until we hear the gunshot go off. And there was a cop there, saw 40, and shot 40 dead. Then they tried pinning all the murders on 40, but Quinn's family all had so much money that they convoluted the whole thing. And now it's just under the wash. Who cares? While Joe and Love take themselves to suburbia. Season 3. So, Season 3 is a little wishy-washy because these two have a baby and now they're raising baby Henry. And baby Henry is their whole pride and joy. But Joe knows his wife's a murderer. Joe's trying to be better. Joe needs to do better. But then he does get the eye of Natalie, the neighbor. And the neighbor is laying it on pretty thick. Like, her husband's this famous tech guy. They got cameras everywhere, but she knows where to hide from the cameras. They have wine. She starts to get a little flirty with him, and Joe says no. But he does keep something of hers because he's infatuated with her. And the box of keeping stuff is always what Joe does. Of course, Love finds said box, and Natalie is a real estate person, so she wants to show Love how awesome this place could be for her to open up a bakery, and Love kills her. Joe finds it, and ta-da, now Joe has to help hide a body. And Joe's pretty pissed about this, but he does so. And then they start seeing a therapist because they want to talk about their issues, but they can't really talk about them exactly to this therapist, so they do work through some stuff. They get on the same page that they're a team, and the best way that they can get through this is being a team. That's going to make everything better. Joe's so excited about this team theory. But then baby Henry gets sick in the hospital. Joe gets sick and doesn't make it to the hospital. He ends up actually being at the neighbor's house because he's trying to sneak over, I think it was like a bloody scarf from Natalie's, to try to make it look like the husband did it because it's this giant missing persons case and they want to pin it on the husband. But Joe seems to think, hey, this guy took care of me. He's actually really nice. I'm not going to do that. And he takes the scarf back. But the person who did get their baby sick was 2 other little kids. And the guy comes over to apologize that his kid had, I think it's measles, and that's what got baby Henry sick. So what does Love do? She knocks him out. Throws him in the cage because, yes, we got another cage. And this one is the bottom, the basement of this bakery. So they lock him in there, and they leave him in there for days because he's going to tell on them, and they got to figure out what to do with this. But they use a baby monitor to watch him. And they try to get him to confess something that he did that would be like kind of equal. So like, hey, we know you won't tell on us if we don't tell your secret. It doesn't quite get that far. And they end up, Quinn uses her family connections to get some information on this guy to be able to blackmail him because a whole bunch of money to cover up something, and he didn't know it was actually happening, but it was his wife covering up something that his son did because his son sexually abuses women. And he feels like he failed his son by never doing anything, and when they're gone, he ends up hanging himself in there. But Love thinks, perfect opportunity. There's a big search going on in the woods tonight to find Natalie. Boom, they take an axe. They put her blood on it from the scarf. They also then put his fingerprints all over this axe, and Joe takes the body back to his house, hangs him up there, writes a nice little note confessing to everything and committing suicide, while Love puts this nice little axe in the woods. They find it. Everybody thinks it's boom, ding, dang, dung, shut case. But the husband does not agree, and he wants to keep searching. And his son, Theo, and Theo has this huge crush and infatuation with Love. And he's been hitting on her since they ran into each other at the store. And at one point he actually does kiss her. And this is where things kind of fall off the rails in this season for the two of them, because Joe is working at a bookstore and he falls in love, infatuation with Marienne, his boss, who's just a single mom, doesn't even have her daughter because the husband that she was with is such an asshole, doing everything he can to prevent that from happening. So she needs to be saved. And Joe's favorite thing is, how can I save a woman? How can I protect her? That's my goal in life. And we find out that when he was a kid, his mom was getting beat by his dad and all this stuff. His mom bought a gun one day and said this is so he can't do it again. While they're fighting, Joe grabs the gun and shoots his dad dead. His mom then disowns him and can't take care of him, so she drops him off at a children's orphanage type thing, where he gets the shit beat out of him all the time and he's bullied. So that kind of gives us a little bit of a backstory on why Joe is the way he is, because his mom felt like she couldn't be protected, and then he finally did what he had to protect his mother, the woman he loved, the only person important in his life, a woman who needed help. So he always goes back on that's what he's doing. He's giving a woman the help that she needs. But fast forward, he's falling for Marienne. As oddly weird as this gets, he no longer is sexually excited to be with Love. They don't fool around or anything anymore. And Love ends up having an affair, cheating on Joe with Theo, the teenage boy next door with which she killed his mom. Yeah, she has no morals. She's actually the evil person in this entire situation. They've brought her in as complete chaos. And that's all going on. And then eventually one night she decides that they need to start swinging. They're going to hang out with their friends Sherry and Carrie, because those people are known swingers. And Joe doesn't really want to do this, but he's like, wow, this is an easy out for me to get out of this marriage. I can take Henry, run off with Henry and Marienne. We're going to be a happy family, and I can get away from this psycho person who keeps putting me in these situations where I got to do stuff I don't want to do anymore. It doesn't go well, because Joe is fooling around with Sherry, and he seems to be really enjoying himself, but he's also looking off in the distance, and Love knows that's not me he's thinking about. There's somebody else. Who am I missing that Joe's so excited for? She calls it quits with a Hakuna Matata. That's how you stop it. And she runs downstairs. They're fighting and arguing, and in the whole thing, she talks about how she had to kill just to be able to fix this because of his problem with Natalie. Of course, there's two people upstairs, but they don't know if they heard it. And Joe's trying to tell her, shut the up. Shut up. And she's not listening because she's erratic in this situation. She's hormonal-ish. She is just a woman who is on the last ends of her meat, trying to do what can never make her man happy, while still making herself happy on the side. So how that works in her head, I don't know. But they go upstairs, and yes, they figured it out. They overheard everything. So there's a little tussle in there, and guess who gets thrown in a cage? Those two. And they're down there for a very long time. But do they die? No, they do not. They actually figured out that neither one of them trusted each other at all, and someone hid a key inside that place. They do eventually find the key, and they do eventually get out. But in the meantime, Joe and Love start to have their own issues because Joe figured out that she's cheating with Theo, and she figures out that it's Marienne. Marienne stops by the house because she uses Joe's phone, and she's going to kill Marienne until Marianne's daughter shows up and has to use the bathroom, and then she feels like she can't do that. She can't take away a mom, because she's a mom now. But it is what it is. She does actually kill Theo, because Theo figures everything out and is going to turn Joe in, and her only safe bet is to kill Theo, the kid she was screwing around with and killed his mom. That one. We have a big dinner. She's trying to make it up to Joe. She makes him something, and he's kind of looking at it funny, like, where's this coming from? I don't understand. He decides he's going to have some partake in this meal, and he falls to the floor and he can't talk. And that whole thing with Marianne coming to the house and stuff, he's all on the floor while that happens. And then Love goes back over to him afterwards because she had been growing something in the garden that would kill him, and then she used it in his food. But Joe, being as smart as he is, also took adrenaline because he had a feeling that's what she was doing, and he figured out what the plant was and what counteracts it. She thinks he's on the ground and she's going to have her way. He ends up killing Love. And then he sets the whole place on fire. He leaves a note of everything she's done, chops off 2 of his pinky toes, like the 2 small toes on one foot, puts them in the food. So it's like she baked her husband, that's why you can't find the rest of the body. And he takes baby Henry over to Dante, who actually worked also at the bookstore. He was a blind man, and he's married to another man, and they've done well with raising the kids that they have. So Joe knew he'd be in good hands, and Joe decides, I need to whisk off and get to Marienne. Marienne had figured out everything about Joe up to this point, and she had taken off to Paris. Season 4. Joe goes to Paris, and he does run into lovely Marienne, and she's scared shitless of him. She tries running away, and he tells her, you can go. I'm sorry, I thought this would work. Obviously, you're scared of me. Let me prove to you that I'm really not that person, and I'm trying to be better. I'll let you go, and you'll see that I'm not that person. And he takes a nice little vacation and goes to England and becomes a teacher. So, in this crowd, he's deciding, I need to stay home, I need to lay low, there is absolutely nothing I'm going to do, I'm not putting myself in any harm's way, I need to prove to Marianne I am who I am. A good man. But he does see a woman by the name of Kate, and he's trying not to get tempted, but he, of course, gets tempted. He can't help it, it's who he is. So, he gets tempted. He then is kind of following Kate around, paying attention, and Kate's actually dating Malcolm, which is one of his colleagues at the college. One night, Kate is kind of getting attacked by some muggers. He runs over and he diffuses the situation. He helps her. And what does Malcolm do? Thanks. Let's take you to a party. And he takes them to this party where they get to meet the elite of the elite. The best people of London. Which are actually some of the shittiest people. But obviously, that's what these stories always tell, is a rich person's kind of a piece of shit. And he wakes up the next day because he had been doing a little too much drinking. And Malcolm's dead on his kitchen table. He doesn't think he did it. He assumes he's been set up. So what does he do? He discards the body, because that's what Joe's good at. He's good at hiding dead bodies. So he does. And he then starts getting these weird text messages, and they're very, very, you need to do this, you're going to do what I say. If not, I'm going to out you, Joe Goldberg. And the person knows who he is, and he's trying to get Joe to take care of the dirty work. And there's this whole group of rich friends, in which Malcolm was part of that. Kate's still part of that. And then there's a few others. Phoebe, there's Adam, there's a guy by the name of Reese. And Reese is kind of the outcast of this group. Like, he's friends with them, but he doesn't really see eye to eye to them. And Joe had read his memoir. It's a book about his life on how he kind of grew up in kind of a really shitty situation, and he's made it good. And now that guy's running for mayor because he wants to make the city of London better. But Joe's kind of stuck in a whodunit because he doesn't know exactly who the killer is. He knows it's not him, and he knows he's going to be set up, and he's getting text messages from the person who is the killer and knows who Joe is and wants to pin it all on Joe if he can. But now he's just going to have fun with it. And he starts taking out members of this group one by one. And he gets, the second person is killed, Simon, at an art show. And then they all decide they need to whisk away to this famous little castle, I think it is, of theirs. And they're all there, and they're going to have some fun, get away from this whole situation because someone's trying to kill the rich. The kill the rich killer, get the rich killer, something along those lines. They play a murder mystery game. Because that's what everybody does when they think they're going to die. Play a murder mystery game. Let's see how it turns out. It's all going to be all right. We will do this. And in the meantime, he starts to learn that some people don't really trust Joe. One person in particular, and his name is Rold. Rold doesn't like the fact that he's getting close to Kate because Rold likes Kate. And Kate and Joe can't be together if Rold wants to be with Kate. So while they are there, he gets pushed out of a window by Rold. But he lands in some bushes. Luckily, he doesn't die. He's just in a lot of pain. Then he hears screaming, so he runs upstairs and he finds Kate over the body of another one of the rich people. And his first thought is, she's the killer. I finally caught her. But she says it's not her, and maybe it was Joe. And Joe's like, oh, it wasn't me. I obviously just found you here in the body and you're holding a knife. So she then needs his help. We need to get rid of this body because these guys are going to think it's us and then they're going to come after us. So let's get rid of the body. And smartingly, they get rid of the body. They move it outside to like a barn. And then Joe has to go back and check on the body. And when he does, who walks in? Rold. So I caught you. I caught the killer. And Joe tries to explain, no, we came across her, we moved her body outside because we didn't want you guys thinking that we were the killer. But that's not me. And Rold gives him a head start and is going to go hunting for him. While they're out and about in the woods, Joe gets a nice little head start running off, and Rold is coming after him. But he then sneaks around a tree and knocks Rold down. He chokes Rold out when Reese walks up and hits him in the face with a gun, and then he wakes up in a dungeon. Shackled. In a dungeon. Underground. Nobody knows they're there. But so is Rold. And Reese tells him, hey, I know everything about you. It's been me this whole time. I need to get these people out of my life because they're going to ruin my political career. I need you to help me. And the only way I know you're going to do that, and I'm going to help you get free, is if you kill Rold. He's like, how can I do that? I'm chained up. He's like, you'll find a way. That's your job. Kill this guy. But Joe's trying to be a better person, and he chooses not to kill Rold. And when Reese comes back, he says, all right, thought we could work together. Guess we're not. And he knocks over a lantern, which starts a fire. And then Joe has to figure it out. Rold wakes up, sees that they're both chained up, and is like, shit, that wasn't him. Joe breaks free. He then helps Rold get free. And they both sneak out through this little roof thingy where Kate pulls him up. And Joe's a hero. So he can't be the killer, because if he was the killer, wouldn't he have just killed Rold right then and there? He looks like the good guy. They all go back to London. He's looking like the good guy, but he doesn't understand why Reese wanted him to do that. But Kate also has a dad who's very, very rich. She was very privileged. She tries to act like she wasn't. She's trying to be a better person. She doesn't want to be a part of her dad's life, or him to be a part of her life. But he's coming to town, and Joe says, well, instead of running from him and hiding, how about we meet him for dinner? And he meets him, and this lovely, lovely man knows exactly who Joe is. And when they're alone, he propositions him that I need you to kill Reese because he's going up against the political section and he's trying to take me and my company down. So I need you to kill Reese. But Reese had previously given him the knowledge of I need you to kill her dad. So now he has both people telling him to kill him. But he doesn't really know what to do. And then Reese uses Marienne to get Joe to do his dirty work by telling him that we have Marienne locked up. Yes, she's in the cage. Yes, you know the cage. It's all your famous cage. But if you want to find out where she is, you got to kill the dad. But when he goes over and decides he's going to talk to the dad, maybe even kill the dad says, hey, I know what's going on. I know who you're looking for. I can tell you exactly where Reese is, because Reese is now hiding away so nobody knows where he is. And he tells him where he lives, what house he's hiding out in the middle of nowhere, and then Joe can then go see him. So Joe then goes and he runs into Reese, and Reese says, do I know who you are? And Joe's like, obviously. And he knocks him out, He chains him up, and he's going to do some lovely torture. Zip tie to the old donger. Squeeze tight. It's going to hurt. This whole time, Reese is complaining, like, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know who Marienne is. I don't know where she is. Joe doesn't believe him, and Joe accidentally kills him. It's not accidentally. He literally chokes him. So, in this process, then the guy that he knows as Reese walks out in his suit, and then he explains to him that that guy has never met you. You've never met Reese in your life. Turns out Reese this whole time was a figment of Joe's imagination, his psyche. It was his evil side taking over that he was talking to, getting weird text messages from, conversations he had with them were always alone. Nobody ever talked to Reese in the group this whole entire season. So Joe then starts to put the pieces together that he's the one who's been killing everybody. He's still Joe Goldberg. Same guy. Just now he's having kind of a dissociation order. No, that's a disorder. Everybody's got one. Come on now. But in this, he then needs to figure out where Marienne is. And he slowly but surely starts to figure out where she is, and he runs into her and sees her, and she's almost dead because he hasn't been there for weeks. She has no food. She just wants to get home to her daughter. So Joe gives her some food, says he's sorry, he doesn't know what's going on. He's trying to figure out and put all the pieces together, but he's going to get her safe and get her free. Marienne then knows, though, that's not going to happen. But while Joe's doing all this teaching, he has one very, very, very smart student. Her name is Nadia. And she's putting the pieces together because Joe talks to her about, hey, do you know about murder mysteries or whodunits? All this stuff because he's trying to get information. And then Nadia starts to catch him in some lies, and she decides she's going to be Joe Goldberg. I'm going to stalk. I'm going to snoop. I'm going to break in. I'm going to find what I need to find. And in this whole process, she ends up finding the box full of goodies because that's what Joe does. He keeps a box full of goodies. And she gets a key. She ends up finding the location, and she finds Marienne in the box. And her goal is to help Marienne. So she comes up with a plan. But Joe leaves Marienne alone for the night, goes out with Kate. When she comes back, Marianne's in the cage, dead. Pill overdose. You can't leave an addict with some drugs. So Joe is nice enough to then carry her body out of that place. He takes her to a park bench and leaves her there like she died of an overdose. And then he goes away. But Nadia had told her to take these. It's going to make you appear dead. And then I'm going to come give you an injection to bring you back to life. Let's hope it works. She follows Joe. Joe leaves. She goes over to Marienne on the park bench, gives her the injection. Marienne wakes up from her deep, deep sleep. And now Marienne can go be with her daughter happily ever after because Joe thinks she's dead. So she doesn't have to worry about Joe anymore. But Nadia still gets an inkling because she needs to know what's going on. So after that, Joe, now that he knows he's the bad guy and he was just sent to kill Reese, who wasn't actually a bad guy, has to meet Kate's dad. But Kate's dad doesn't know what's coming. So he does come in and he attacks him. He then sits him down in a chair about how horrible he is to Kate because this is obviously still a protective thing. He's trying to protect Kate, make Kate happy, and do what Kate needs. Man walks in, sees him tied up. He ends up getting killed. And then Joe ends up killing Kate's dad after wiring a bunch of money. Not to himself, but to somebody else. Makes it look like the guy who killed her dad, which is the guy he killed, did it over money. Takes the body and discards it, so it looks like the guy has disappeared, and it was all over money, and Kate inherits everything in the whole business. And the nice art place she's going to have in New York City. Kate then doesn't know what to do. She's been handed everything, and she kind of likes it. Joe's then trying to figure out, oh God, what do I do? I've hurt all these people. I've hurt Marienne. I don't want to hurt anybody else. He's arguing with himself, which is Reese. And he decides, I can't be with Kate. I'm just going to hurt her in the long run. So he goes off to a very, very, very big bridge, and he jumps off. Falls in the water, and he drowns. But obviously not if we're having a season 5, because he gets taken out of the water, I guess. He wakes up in a hospital, and he's alive. And the doctor says, someone's here to see you. It was Kate. And he decides, I need to come clean with Kate. I'm going to tell her everything. Like, I've killed people. I'm this terrible person. I didn't think you could handle it. I didn't want to hurt you. So, and Kate explains that, she's had some demons in her past. And how about you and I work together? You'll keep me sane. I'll keep you sane. And we're going to make sure that nothing happens. We're both going to be good going forward. Joe thinks that's awesome. That's all he's ever wanted to hear. He wanted somebody who loves him for who he is and can help him get through the tough times, because nobody has ever really done that for him. But he goes back to his apartment, and who does he see coming from the apartment? Nadia. She's outside trying to get a hold of her boyfriend, and Joe comes up. And obviously she's scared because she knows exactly what Joe is. And he tries to tell her, hey, I've got money now. I'm going to be fine. Let me set you up. Let me help you. All you got to do is, keep your mouth shut about this. And then she trips over a body, and it's her boyfriend dead on the ground. And he's like, yeah, I need you to put your hands on this. And he puts the knife on his hands. He goes, see, we got a box of Reese's stuff where we already have it over at his house. So he's going to look like he was the one infatuated with Reese and killed him. And then you killed your boyfriend because of what he did. Sorry, but this is the only way we can do this without killing you. And I think you're really smart, and I want the best for you. So, boom, that's how the season is going to end. We have Nadia in prison. Joe is with Kate, and they're doing interviews on how they both have came from really troubled times, and look at them now. They are the power couple on top of the world in London. And we'll have to see where Season 5 goes. But that is everything. The entire recap. Seasons 1 through 4. Comment down below any of your favorite parts. I am going to do another video on kind of like what's coming up in Season 5 right before the season drops. And after the whole thing is said and done with Season 5, I want to do a breakdown of the character of Joe Goldberg. So also be on the lookout for that in the near future, since Season 5 comes out on April 24th. Alright, see you at the next one.